Welcome back. In today's exercise, we are going to take an equation that we've been given. We're going to kind of break it down and figure out what information is within this equation, and then we're going to find the missing piece. So here I'm going to look at my first equation. It says this equation shows how the length of Brenna's hair depends on the number of years since her last haircut. And my equation says H equals 13t. I'm going to write that again. H equals 13t. The variable t represents the number of years since Brenna's last haircut. So t is my number of years. And h represents her hair length. Okay, so h is length. Now, Brenna last got her haircut 1 year ago. 1 year ago. So that means that my 1 year can be substituted into my equation to find out how long it is now. Well, 1 year is the number of years, right? So this number is going to go in here for t. So I would have h equals 13 times 1. That means her length after 1 year would be 13, and this would be in centimeters. So it's helpful to write out the equation and then kind of label those. Think about what those represent. Now, if you think about it, this is really just in y equals mx plus b. My total equals my rate times how many times my rate happens. Her rate happened 1 year. Let's look at number next. This equation shows how the cost of a cab ride depends on the distance in miles. So I'm going to write C equals D plus 3. The variable D represents the miles driven. So, okay, miles driven. Just going to set it up and kind of label it out. The variable C represents the cost in dollars. Well, that makes sense. C is cost. It's like the total amount. If a cab ride is 13 miles long, so it's 13 miles long, where would that go in my equation? Miles long, that would be miles driven. So that's going to be here where my D is. How much will it cost? So I'm going to be looking for C. So C equals, plug that in, 13 plus 3. Well, 13 plus 3 is 16. So I would say that my total cost is $16 for this cab ride. Here's another one. This equation shows the total number of hair bands Lisa owns is related to the amount of money she spends on additional hair bands. So let's write the equation. H equals D plus 3. That's been given to us. The variable D represents the amount of money she spends on additional hair bands. So I'm going to write that. D is additional hair bands or new hair bands. So I'm going to put add new. And the H represents the total number of hair bands. So H is my total hair bands. How much money does Lisa spend on new hair bands? So I don't know my new ones. This is what I don't know. In order to own a total of 16. So the total of 16 would go exactly where H is. So 16 equals D plus 3. Now I'm solving for D, right? What's attached to D? Well, plus 3. How do I move plus 3? I'm going to subtract 3. What I do to one side of an equation, I know I must do to the other. I must keep my teeter-totter in balance. So 13 equals D. So this is money, so I would say, well, that's $13 is how much she would spend on additional hair bands. So this equation here is going to show us the total pages of notes in Maddie's notebook depends on the number of hours she spends in class. So I'm going to write P equals H plus 9. The variable H represents the hours in class. Okay, so P is hours in class, and H, oh no, wait a second, the variable P represents total. H is hours spent in class, the variable P represents the total pages. Well, let's fix that. The hours goes with H. P is my pages of notes. Okay. In all, how many hours will Maddie have to spend in class before? How many hours? So I don't know the hours. So I'm going to be looking for hours spent in class before she will have a total of 10 pages. Well, that's going to go here for P, so I'm going to rewrite this. Substitute 10 in for P, so 10 equals H plus 9. Well, I'm solving for H. Attached to H is plus 9. We're going to move it across the equal sign, so we're going to undo addition with subtraction. I will keep this equation in balance by doing what I do to one side, I do to the other. 10 minus 9 is 1 equals, I'm going to drop the H, the 9's have canceled. And what does that 1 stand for? Well, it just stands for 1 hour. So it's really helpful when you're working on these types of problems to rewrite the equation and then label them, and that way you'll keep straight what goes where, and then you just solve your equation. I look for what I'm missing, and I just either simplify or I move across the equal sign.